Hey, my name is Gavin and this is how I healed from arachnoiditis, failed back surgery syndrome, epidural fibrosis, and a toxic annular tear. I was diagnosed with all four of those things, and this is my story about how I healed from that. The part one of the story is going to lead towards more of a mechanical, and part two is going to go more into the root cause of how I healed it. But it's important that you understand the beginning of the story because you're going to see yourself in me a lot, and you have to understand the very basics of it. But I was struggling to make this video because I wanted people to see it. So I'm like, how do I say it this way to get them to see it, and how do I make this way? And my mom's like, just explain that to them. Just say that you're having a hard time getting out the message that you want to get out. So that hit home for me. And then one of the last things that Steve Ozanich said to me was, as always, speak from the heart and don't use prefabricated phony words. And that really hit hard for me. I'm just simply going to tell my truth. I'm simply going to tell my story. And if you can see yourself in my story and you can heal just like I healed, that's great. If not, you aren't ready yet, and that's okay too. Hopefully you can come back to this video, watch it, the whole thing again, and then see yourself in it and be healed just like I was healed. This story starts off as my back pain my senior year in college. I was getting ready for basketball. I was training a lot, lifting a lot of weights, and on the third practice of my senior year, I came down and felt a pop in my low right side. And previously, before that, I was having tightness down there. It wouldn't loosen up; it would stay locked up and whatnot. And when I came down from that rebound and I heard the pop, I instantly knew, okay, something's wrong here, and it just locked up and would not let go. The days go by and I end up going to physical therapy. And then I'm going to a chiropractor, and they're all saying the same thing. They're like, do you have anything down the leg? And I'm like, no, I don't have anything down the leg. And then one physical therapy session, I do a McKenzie exercise, or the Cobra pose, and then I got it down the leg. I got an extreme jolt of nerve pain, and it's like a lightning bolt down your leg. It's nerve pain. It's unlike anything else, and I know you guys know what I'm talking about. It is literally the most crippling thing, as Dr. Sarno even gets into. But Tiger Woods, Ronnie Coleman's 8-time Mr. Olympian, and he said it's the worst pain he's ever been in. I mean, I know you guys know what it is. You just can't describe it. So my senior year of college basketball, this is happening. And I get an MRI, and it comes back L5-S1, herniated disc with a pars fracture hitting the exiting L5 nerve root. So I'm like, oh gosh, this isn't good. And I kept trying to play, to do everything I could, and my basketball career was done. And that was devastating for me because I felt like I was just getting in the right strides and getting my body where it needed to be, and my lateral foot speed, where all the things that went in, I felt like I was so ready. And so I had to drop out of school and move home and not play my senior year, and that was really hard to deal with. And I eventually rehabbed and got better, and then I went back to the junior college I played at and started coaching. There I started coaching, and my back was fine. I just couldn't run, jump, or twist, or that nerve pain would come back, the exiting L5 nerve pain. And so that was frustrating to me because that was my coping mechanism. That's what I did to relieve stress, was lift weights or be active, and that was tough for me. So after that year of coaching, I had enough, and I finally was just like, okay, I'm gonna do the microdiscectomy. So I had an L5-S1 microdiscectomy to relieve the disc off the nerve. Everything went good supposedly, and the pressure was relieved off the nerve, supposedly, and I was back to normal. Shortly thereafter, I got the head coaching job, and we went through the whole season again, and I had life back, but I still couldn't, do much activity-wise. I'd get a flare-up, I get the nerve jolt every once in a while, so it's just better for me just to not do anything active, because that nerve pain, I didn't want anything to do with it. So after the head coaching job that I got, after that year, I decided to swing a baseball bat with 2 weeks left in the season. And I remember swinging that baseball bat as hard as I could. And they say after surgery, work your way back into activity. Don't just jump back into it. Well, I jumped right back into it. I started swinging for a half hour as hard as I could. And sure enough, back tightness again. I'm like, okay, as long as I don't get nerve pain, I can deal with this back stuff. I can deal with the muscle tightness, And 2 weeks later go by, and here comes the nerve pain again. Except for this time, I get nerve pain in the other leg. And my friend who had surgery also, back surgery also, said, as long as you don't get it in both legs, my surgeon said you're good. You'll be okay. And I start getting it everywhere. I mean, I was getting nerve pain, inner thighs, outer thighs, both my calves, both feet, every dermatome and pathway from L2 down to S4, or S3, was being stimulated. And I'm talking pain, zap, burning, muscle twitching, everything, all of the nerve roots, to where you could visibly see my muscles zapping and twitching. So basically, I had to resign from my head coaching position, which was really my dream job. I had to move back home again, and basically just settle there on the floor. I couldn't sleep in a bed. I couldn't stand very long. I couldn't sit in any chair. If I sat in a chair for 20 minutes, the amount of nerve pain that would manifest from that you'd be laid up for 2 weeks. So my life at 25 years old went from a head coach at a junior college, and everything going pretty well, to bam, nothing, to living with my parents, living on the floor in pain, nerve pain 24/7. And that was a really hard time for me. So we start trying to figure out what's going on. We go back to my original surgeon. He's like, the disc is reherniated, but you have failed back surgery syndrome. That was the first diagnosis that I got out of the 4 I've described at the beginning of this video. And I'm like, failed back surgery syndrome. I'm like, what's that? So I start getting online. I'm searching every day because I haven't got nothing else to do. I'm stuck on the floor in pain all the time. So I'm just I'm learning how to read MRIs. I'm doing everything I possibly can to learn what the heck is going on with me, because I don't want this to be the rest of my life. And so he diagnosed me with failed back surgery syndrome, epidural fibrosis, and he shushed me out the door, and he never saw me again. I called appointments to try and get scheduled, wouldn't schedule me, which, as you guys know why, they don't want anything to do with you. And by the way, when you have back surgery, there's a reason why Steve Ozanich stayed as far away as he did from a knife and a needle, and thank God he did. But there's a reason why back surgeons wouldn't have back surgery. If you ask any good surgeon, they're going to be like, no, stay far away, because they know all of the complications from a back surgery, and you only get one back. So I started to dig into this, and he sent me to a pain specialist, and the pain specialist was like, let's do this injection and do this. And at this point in time, I'm like, well, I know injections can cause what I have, so I'm not doing any more injections. And I remember going to the 3rd appointment, and he's like prescribing gabapentin and Lyrica, and I'm like, I'm not taking any of this. I took 0 pills this whole time, except for after surgery. But before that, I took nothing, and a Medrol dose pack, maybe. But I remember telling my parents during this time, they're like, why aren't you taking what the doctors are prescribing you? I'm like, first off, the reason why I'm here is because of the doctors. And second of all, that's not going to solve the root of the problem. I remember saying that over and over. I'd tell my parents and my friends, I want to know the root cause of my problem. And so I remember going to the pain specialist, and I remember asking him that, and he goes, you don't need to know the root cause. And I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, you got inflammation. And I'm like, where do I have inflammation? He's like, that doesn't matter. All you need to know is you're going to be in pain the rest of your life. And I remember looking at him when he locked eyes with me and said that. He had no soul when he said that. Not a care in the world. He didn't care. He was trying to get out of that visit as soon as he possibly could. And so right then and there, he told me that. And I remember this deep internal thought of like, nope, not me. I'm not going to be this way the rest of my life. There's no way. And it was hope. That's all that is. And there's a reason why you're watching this video. Hope. You're hoping, you're searching, you're looking, but you're not looking in the right areas. And hopefully I can lead you into the right area, because I wasn't looking in the right areas. So I knew at this point in time that I had arachnoiditis. So I thought I had arachnoiditis. I sent my films and MRIs to Dr. Tennant, who's a great man. Dr. Tennant is such a caring individual, and I wish nothing but the best for him. There's good doctors out there, and I'm not throwing all of them under the water, but Dr. Tennant is a great person, and he came back with me And he's like, I'm sorry to tell you this, you got arachnoiditis, L2 to S3, you've got clumping of the nerve roots, you got nerve roots dragging in your sacral area. It happens after surgery sometimes, it's a complication, it's rare, but you got it. Here's what you need to do protocol-wise. So I'm jumping on his protocol. I'm in the pool every day. I get in the pool because in the pool I had no nerve pain. So I would get, you better best believe I was in that pool every day. It allowed me to stay active, and there was no nerve pain involved. So it was either laying on the floor, getting muscle zaps and twitches and burning of the feet constantly all day long, or in the pool. So you found me in one of those two places. And when he diagnosed me with that, and I started doing more research about arachnoiditis and what the literature said, that really shot me down too. Because I was like, okay, there's no way out of this. You're screwed the rest of your life. But still, something deep down inside of me went, nope, not me. That I'm refusing. That's not going to be. And thankfully for my friends, don't let this sound like it was this confident, easy thing. It was. You guys know how hard it is. If you have one person to listen to you, that's all you need. Like just someone's ear to be like, what's going on? And luckily for my friends and my family, if any of you guys are watching this, thank you literally for listening to me rant right now, but listening to me rant way time ago, because if it wasn't for you, I don't know where I'd be, legitimately. And I had so many people come up to me when I told them that I healed, and then I find they'd be like, oh, I was praying for you. They would say that all the time. I've been told that so many times, so thank you for your prayers, because they've been answered. And so I remember just thinking, nope, not me. So I got pool workouts, I got doing his protocol, I'm doing everything I can to resolve the clumping of the nerve roots, to resolve my failed back surgery syndrome. And I still have that herniated disc. So I'm like, okay, well, if I can get this herniated disc off L5, at least that'll help my L5 nerve, right? Because you're willing to do anything to help 5-10%. You're willing to do anything. I know you are, because you just need a little bit of hope, or just take the pain off just a little bit. So I find a surgeon down in California, and he's a great guy too. He's almost there. He's almost got it. He recognizes and thinks that annular tears, which I had in the disc, was leaking chemicals that stimulate nerves everywhere. And part of me was kind of hoping that that was it too, because then there'd be a way out. But I had a CT discography, which is where they take a needle and stick it all the way down into your disc while you're awake, and they pump it full of pressure and dye. And just thinking about that, sometimes I'll be like, oh, am I going to get a nerve jolt just thinking about that? I have before. And my disc came back as a grade 5 disc, which is 1 through 5. Like 0 is the best, and 5 is the worst disc you can have. Like it's all torn to pieces, and it's leaking this material. He's close. They're close. But not quite yet. Not quite the answer yet. Not the root cause of the problem yet. And so I had a transforaminal discectomy to try and get the disc off the L5 nerve and seal up that annular tear, and so to stop the leaking of the inflammatory chemicals, the cytotoxins, and all of that stuff that the literature says. But so I had that surgery, and on day 8 of that surgery, I had to sneeze really bad, and I don't really sneeze that often, but I had the sneezes of all sneezes coming. And I was like, please, no. And I tried to hold it in, and I remember holding it in and just felt a pop again. And I'm like, oh no, I know what that feeling is. And then L5 nerve pain again. And at this point in time, it's been 3 years of this constantly. I was rock bottom at that point in time. Like, I'm calling my friends frantically. I'm telling my parents, I re-herniated it. I'm screwing this up. You know, my parents just dropped $30,000 on this back surgery because insurance didn't cover. We had to fly down to California. And I get an MRI, and sure enough, re-herniated disc, L5S1, pinching L5 nerve, and I still have the clumping, I still have the epidural fibrosis, and I've hit officially rock bottom. That's part 1 of my story. That might sound a lot like you. You had surgery, 6 to 8 months later, you start getting nerve pain everywhere, you know, or reoccurring nerve pain, and then nerve pain in new ways. That's part 1 of my story. That's the mechanical part of my story. Part 2 is how I healed. And part 2 is important, because it's the most important, because it's how you let go. It's how you solve the root of the problem. It's how I solve the root of the problem. So let's get into the emotional side of this, where I was at mentally back to the beginning. My senior year of college basketball, I was worried about what everyone was saying about me. I was trying to please everybody. I was trying to be a good person. I was trying to look a certain way. I was lifting 2.5 hours, 2 hours a day. I was trying to be somebody I wasn't. And then I was always looking in the future. How am I going to pay my student loans back? What job am I going to get? Am I going to have a good house? When am I going to get married? All of these things. And then the past, I was worried about everything, and I was never present, not once. And that in itself, that personality type, you will realize when you read Dr. Sarno's book, Healing Back Pain, The Mind-Body Connection, because you will read yourself on every page, and you'll realize you never needed the back surgery in the first place. You do know there are people who go through MRI machines and have clumping of the nerve roots and arachnoiditis that they just find, the radiologist finds and tells the patient, and they have no symptoms. Why is that? Or people have herniated discs pushing against nerve, but they don't have nerve pain, they just have back pain. Or there's someone with a pars fracture and a slippage of a disc forward, but they have no back pain. But yet my little pars fracture caused my whole back to lock up. You're going to find these connections that you're like realizing why it was you. And thank God for Dr. Sarno, because he knew the root cause of the problem. He found it. And so when I was at that senior year of college, it wasn't the herniated disc pressing the nerve causing my pain. It wasn't the pars fracture. It was me not being my true self. And when I was going into that year, the reason why I chose that 4-year school, sorry, you guys might be able to hear the combine down there, they're cutting, but the reason why I chose that school, I could have gone to a couple other schools. The reason why I chose that school, it was 2 hours away from home, and at the time my grandma had stage 4 cancer, stomach cancer, and I wanted her to be able to see me play. And growing up as a kid in a small town, she went to every game. My grandpa and her, and both sets of my grandparents, man, I'm blessed. They went to every ball game. They didn't miss a game. Football, baseball, basketball, she went to it. So I wanted to go to that school, and also I enjoyed the people there, and I really liked the coach. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to this school instead of go to California or wherever, because I wanted my grandma to see me play before anything bad happened. And when I had to quit and go home because of the first herniation, I got to spend the last moments with her. She lived right up the road from me. And that was the silver line. I'm like, well, I'm not going to be able to play basketball again my senior year that I've been working really hard for, but at least I get to spend time with my grandma. And I knew it was happening for a reason. I just told myself, I'm like, this is happening for a reason. You're supposed to be here. And she ended up passing. But I got to spend the last couple months with her, instead of playing a little game with a round ball, which was important to me. And so that's what kept me moving forward. I always had this mindset of this is happening for a reason. And so when I swung the baseball bat again, the reason why that happened and I re-herniated the disc is because subconsciously I was dealing with pressures of coaching that I wasn't dealing with. I was repressing these emotions. We were struggling in the season. I wanted all the kids to like me. I was trying to make my boss feel good, the AD. I was trying to make my dad proud. I was trying to get all these people to like me, and I wasn't dealing with the root cause. I was repressing all of this emotion, and I was also at the same time trying to be somebody I wasn't. I was trying to be the NBA player. I was trying to be someone else that I wasn't, and I wasn't happy with myself. But of course, I knew none of this. It's outside of my awareness. It's deep in my subconscious mind. And when I get into Dr. Sarno's work, the light bulb went off. I swung that bat on purpose. For 30 minutes, you're supposed to easily walk in, and I'm a C+ man. I'm not dumb. I knew the surgeons told me to ease back into things. I jumped right back into swinging that baseball bat because I needed an excuse to go home. So when I swung that bat and re-herniated the disc and caused all of that pain, I had to resign from the job, which was really a dream job. And then I had to move back home, and that's when I started with all of the symptoms. See, this is all making sense when you understand Dr. Sarno's work. That whole time I had repressed all of these emotions from when I was a little kid. I was living life like the medical community treats the back and nerve pain. Completely wrong. And once you read this, and you'll realize that all it is oxygen deprivation from the brain. And it's funny when you read the arachnoiditis and the epidural fibrosis and all the literature on it. Trust me, I've read it every day for 3 years. It says it's trapped electricity. All it is oxygen deprivation deep in the subconscious mind. you will read Dr. Sarno's book and you will realize that you didn't need that surgery in the first place. So you might have the clumping of the nerve roots, you might have scar tissue hitting nerves, you might have failed back surgery syndrome or a tear in a disc, but keep in mind, you were in a TMS state before you even had those abnormalities. Meaning you had that injection that was put in the wrong place, or you had that back surgery that caused scar tissue to be trapped by that nerve. You were already in a TMS state because you had the surgery. There is a reason behind your pain. You have to find the root cause of it. And once you read the literature, and once you read Steve's book, The Great Pain Deception, because he's the great patient, I call him, your light bulb will go off. And you'll start to view the world in a whole different place, in a whole different view. And for me, when I read that book, this is the story about how I got that book. Hopefully this is the story about how you got that book. But all of this was going on. I'd moved home after I reherniated it the second time. I'm getting nerve pain everywhere. I'm stuck on the floor. What kept me going? It was my support system, but it was a family friend who she knew all along I would heal. She just knew. I don't know how to explain it. She just knew. And the whole time I'm thinking to her, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, this crazy woman, and if you're watching this, Joan, I'm sorry, but I was like, this crazy woman, she doesn't know what I've got going on. I got these abnormalities. I've got this herniated disc and this clumping of the nerves and this leaking disc. I've been diagnosed by white coats 4 different times. I'm never going to get healed, but she knew that I would get healed. And she worked with me, and her son's an MRI tech, and he worked with me, and their family was just supporting me all along, the whole time. And I remember, before I even read that book, I remember her telling me, or she texted me one day when I hit rock bottom after I'd reherniated again, after my second surgery, and I was still having nerve pain everywhere. I hit rock bottom. I had nothing. Done. I had maybe a sliver of hope. That was it. And she texted me one day and she goes, you need to be more specific about what's going on when you pray. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, lady, like, I appreciate it. I was a Christian growing up. I get it. But like that, I'm just a normal Joe Blow. Like, this isn't going to help. But I did it. I started praying very specifically. I got this herniated disc and this clumping of the nerve roots and failed back surgery syndrome. And sure enough, a month later after I was praying specifically, some lady had saw my review of the surgeon that I had in California. And her son was going through the same thing, so I was trying to help them through it, and he was younger too, so I was like, had empathy. We were kind of like similar. And she messaged me one day after I started specifically praying about it. She goes, you need to read Dr. Sarno's book, Healing Back Pain, Mind-Body Connection. And again, I was like, does this lady not know that I have these things going on with my back? It's almost like insulting. Like, you probably have already exited out of this thing already. Because when you're telling me a book can help me, when I've seen it on the MRI, I've seen my nerve root clumping, I've seen the scar tissue, I've seen the herniated disc. Like, this isn't going to help. And I remember just being like, oh, okay, I'll try it, thanks, da-da-da. Luckily, for the grace of her, she tried again. She's like, hey, did you read that book? And I was like, no, I'll get to it, but thank you, I appreciate it. How are you guys doing, She did it one more time. Did you read that book? And so finally I was like, all right, lady, I'm going to read this book. And if you're watching this too, thank you. I thank you. Nothing scares me anymore. I have no fear other than one thing. And I have another fear is that if I never read this book, that deeply scares me. But I read that book and I read myself on every page of Dr. Sarno's book. And right then, I was the select few that it just instantly clicked. It pierced my subconscious. I just knew. Because I was thinking this the whole time. I was like, why is it that you could get anybody off the street, MRI them, and they have a herniated disc hitting a nerve and they have no pain? Why is that, but I'm here stuck on the floor, And so it just instantly worked. I mean, that day I was up running, and I couldn't sit for 20 minutes. I couldn't do anything. All my friends, like, they knew I couldn't do anything. I was up running that night. Now, I still had problems to go, and I had twitches and nerve pains every once in a while, but it wasn't from the running. It was from not being able to let go. And once you get into the psychology and the background of what TMS is, tension myoneural syndrome, you will realize that the letting go part is totally different than understanding what's actually going on. You will find the root cause of the problem. I found the root cause of the problem. Finally. And I knew all along, somewhere deep down, I just knew that I was going to find it. And there were times, trust me, When you're getting zapped like this, you think there is no way out. When you're getting doctors and surgeons telling you that you're done the rest of your life and that you're going to be in pain the rest of your life, you believe them to a certain point. But something deep down was like, nope. And I knew if I quit, I knew if I gave up, that those players that I coached, my friends, my family would see that I gave up. And I'm setting an example for them that when things get hard in life, just give up. And I didn't want to be that example. So I kept going. I was like, this is happening for a reason. I'm talking to you right now for a reason. So when I made that connection and got into the psychology, I was basically like, I made it move. I was sitting there playing video games one day because you can't do much when you have arachnoiditis and all that. You just literally, so video games, even though I hate video games, but there's nothing to do. And it was like a tense moment, and the nerve pain came on. And I was like, okay, I know what's going on. And I calmed my mind. I talked to my subconscious mind. And then it went to my thigh. And then the back spasms came. And then an old meniscus knee injury started going. I'm like, oh, okay, it's moving. And then an old injury to my shoulder came back. And I'm like, okay, it's moving. And luckily, in the Dr. Sarno's book, he talks about that, the symptom imperative, where it moves. Luckily, I skipped over that part, because if I would have read that part, I would have tried to make it move, and that would not work. I mean, you guys know with TMS, that you can't just think away your pain. That's not a think away pain message. The root cause, the knowledge of the root cause, is the penicillin. In other words, it's the answer. It's the thing that will set you free. And so when I made it move, I was like, okay, I'm good. I made it move, and apparently that's what Doctor said in the book. When you made it move, you had won, and that's, a good thing too. There was another good point. 2 days later, I realized that I was getting my life back. I could sit all day. I could run. I could jump. I could sit. I could twist. I could do these things. I was still deeply afraid to twist. I'm kind of getting tight now talking about it, but I was still afraid to twist. But then I realized, oh, my life is back. So when I had that thought of, oh, my life is back, all of my fears came back. Where am I going to work? How am I going to pay my student loans back? Am I going to make my dad proud? How do I get this person to like me? And it rushed over me in the worst nerve pain. The worst nerve bolt down my leg I've ever had. I came out of my room and I was shaking. And my mom was like, what just happened to you? And I'm like, I just had a nerve jolt. It was the worst pain I've ever had in my entire life. Worst nerve pain. Take whatever you've taken and times it by 10. It hurt so bad, but it was so beautiful. And you're thinking, why would the worst nerve pain be so beautiful? Because I realized that the amount of pain I'm having is the amount of fear I have. That's all it is. Amount of subconscious, repressed fear. And then because that happened, I went golfing. Because I'm like, I can twist all day long, and I can jump, and I can do all this. It ain't going to cause that nerve pain. It ain't going to cause that amount of nerve pain. So it was the worst thing, but it was the best thing possible. So as I wrap up this story, I hope you've made it this far. It's okay if you didn't. You're not ready. Hopefully you came back to this. But read Dr. Sarno's book. Read Steve's books, The Great Pain Deception. Man, I read myself on every page of that. I can't wait. One day, me and Steve I'm going to throw him a slant route. I know it. I just know it. But read The Great Pain Deception. The greatest gift that this all gave me, because it was happening for a reason, was the ability to learn. That's what this gave me. And that's wisdom and knowledge is what brings us joy. To handle different scenarios, to know how to handle them is what brings joy. And life's going to be hard. I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to be easy, but what if you can get rid of this pain? And that's the funny thing is I got rid of the pain and I still wasn't happy because I still hadn't let go. Still hadn't let go yet. It's like you can get a new car, but you're not happy unless you really find inside what makes you happy and be you. Be who you are meant to be. Live out your purpose, who you're supposed to be. You can get a new car, you can get new shoes, and I was a very materialistic person. Oh, I needed everything to make me happy. I was never satisfied in the weight room. I needed bigger shoulders. I needed this new shoes. I needed new pants. Now I don't need anything. I need nothing. That's what's great. That's what's great about this, is you will find that you can just be who you want to be who you're meant to be. I'll leave you with this. When you get into the TMS work, the hardest part for me was letting go, and Steve really helped me let go. His counseling session with me changed my life, and all of it was going over my head. I remember thinking, again, this guy's kooky. Like, oh, not another dead end with this guy. And it was funny, after I started learning more, I could go back and be like, oh, that's what Steve was talking about. Oh, that's what Steve meant. And it was so I still do it today. I just appreciate every word that comes out of him. But I look up to nobody. other than one person, and Steve is somebody right underneath that. It's like, I used to look up to these NBA guys. Now it's like one person, and then Steve's right below that. I really look up to him. But letting go was the hardest part for me, and I was finished with this. Letting go isn't falling. Letting go is rising. And the reason why I say that is when you get gridlocked like this, and the type of personality is, letting go almost feels like you're going to fall into something, and it's very scary. So you gridlock back up, right? So if you let go of it, you're like, oh, no, I'm going to go back to my comfort zone, which is really not comforting at all. But letting go isn't that you're falling to your death. Letting go is you're rising to your success. So once I realized that letting go is safe, and letting go is okay, and you don't have to worry about what everyone says about you. You can just be who you are and be the shining light that you were meant to be. Your whole life will change. So hopefully this message changes someone's life. Hopefully this message hits home and someone picks up Dr. Sarno's book and someone picks up The Great Pain Deception. 99 people can look at this message and go, that guy's full of crap. Nope, not me. That's not it. But one of you will. One of you go, maybe there's a chance. Because I know all of you are holding on to hope. And that's all I had at one point in time was hope. So if you have a sliver of hope, pick up that book. Don't read it too fast. Thankfully, I didn't. Be present when you read it and enjoy it. Yeah, because it'll really be a life changer for you. The sun is setting here. I'm going to sign off. But Steve, everybody that prayed for me, all my friends, all my family, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And Steve, hopefully I can continue a friendship with you, but hopefully this message did you well. I was really worried about making this message to make you proud, but you're proud of me no matter what. So I'll see you